And we're live.
Hey
there, ho there. I guess Bear put me in charge, so I'm here to say that. So yeah, we're talking horror role-playing games tonight. Of course, got me, GM Cody. Bear's going to be joining us in just a minute. He's on a phone call. We've got Brian over here, Gaming with ADHD.
Good morning.
We've got Sean down there, Mage's Musings.
I'm under my blankets for the scary subjects.
You look, I thought you were just being festive, is what I thought.
No, I'm in a basement now, and it's freezing down here, so I'm hiding under blankets.
That and it's Canada, so it's frozen anyways.
And then, of course, we got the infamous Lynn Pimentel.
Hello. I'm actually being operated by the puppet from Mage's Musings right now.
My hand is off to the side going, and I'm not a ventriloquist.
And I guess tonight we're talking horror RPGs, which it wasn't my idea to bring up this topic, but I guess we'll start in the same old fashion that you would start this conversation with.
I know nothing about horror RPGs, so I'll just spout more bullshit than I usually do.
Okay, well, there we go.
That was my job, Sean. What are you doing?
So I guess first question, obvious question to ask everybody is what horror role-playing games have you played the most, and which ones are your favorites? And I'll start with Brian.
Len? No, I was thinking about it. So I have, I'm pulling a Cody today. I have my Beyond the Supernatural. I got books. I got them before the stream. I only have 2 because I don't have an extensive horror collection. But yeah, it's like that's the only one that I have. I have not played any. But I will be honest, horror is also not really my thing. Like, you're not going to get me to a scary movie. You're not going to get me, to try and be, on the edge of my seat waiting to, You're not going to go to a haunted mansion. Okay, I'm going to go to the haunted mansion, but that's a different kind of horror. But
are you talking Disney or
yes, Disney.
Disney, that's pure evil. We don't go that deep. We're here for fun.
For everyone wondering, that's my wife in the background.
We don't.
But yeah, so I don't have a lot of experience, but that's actually one reason I was kind of excited to join in on the panel tonight, is just to get some more ideas and, talk about ways to do it.
Cool. Sean?
Oh, you're not going clockwise? Okay. Yeah, no, as a kid, I loved Beyond the Supernatural. That was the one I always tried to get right, but I was too stupid to get it right. So I could never make it work per se. I could probably, might do a better job now, maybe. Then there's obviously my D&D's my thing. I always wanted to get a good scary Ravenloft game going, but never could quite manage that either. So this is why I like to talk about this. The horror is something that's always eluded me. Recently, I've tried finally Call of Cthulhu, and there's another one that I quite like, Vaesen. I think it's a Free League game.
Yes.
Yeah, Vaesen I thought was kind of interesting. I tried a one-shot over a year ago. So I don't have a lot of traction with the horror games, but they've always intrigued me. I've always wanted to be able to do one right, have the players actually be worried, be scared. That could be kind of fun.
Yeah. Lynn, how about you?
Okay, so much to my surprise, I may have more to speak about than I expected, because I'm not a giant horror RPG fan either, although I do enjoy horror films. But probably the one that I have played the most would be Call of Cthulhu. Obviously enough, it's the elephant in the room of horror games. And I own one called Don't Rest Your Head, which I've not gotten a chance to play. I would love the opportunity. Yeah, but I don't have a whole lot of horror games. I have an interesting game, which is sort of a blend of horror and action, called Cthulhu Tech, which is like a mecha horror game. And I have a couple of games that are a blend of horror and something else. I have the Gumshoe game about fighting vampires, Knights Black Agents, which is an excellent game and also has some horror elements to it. And it's by Ken Hite, so of course everything about it is brilliant. But that's probably about it. But in terms of what I played the most of, by far, it's Cthulhu.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat as you guys. Now, I grew up watching horror movies. I love horror movies. And actually, my wife is an even bigger horror movie fan than me. And one of my first movies I ever saw was a horror film, which it was Nightmare on Elm Street, when I was far, far too young to watch that movie. And it gave me nightmares for weeks on end, but it also, intrigued me. It stuck with me. And also one of the early Christopher Lee Dracula movies, which I don't remember which one it was because he made a few of them, but I saw one of those when I was really young. And so my interest in horror has always been really strong. I've always been attracted to that stuff. And horror role-playing games is no different, but I never played a whole lot of horror role-playing games, or I should say I never stuck with them for very long. So I played a handful of Call of Cthulhu. It'd be like one shots here and there, like a little small campaign, but it wasn't a lot. We played All Flesh Must Be Eaten. And that was probably the longest running horror game we played. Surprisingly enough, it was like a really long, we probably played like a year-long campaign of that, like off and on. And of course, I guess you call World of Darkness horror, but I don't really consider it horror.
That conversation is going on in the chat right now.
Yeah.
I think I'm with you. I don't consider it horror. Maybe we
I don't. Why? It obviously has horror elements to it, but I don't consider it a horror game per se. And I've played other games with like horror elements, like Deadlands. I love Deadlands, but it's not really a horror game, but it's got a lot of that, it's got a lot of the horror vibe and elements. And of course, like Sean said, Ravenloft, always loved Ravenloft, but never played like a full campaign of Ravenloft. It was always something like I would bring the players in.
That was the one thing my players always rebelled every time I suggested it. And they're, no, it's too hard. It's too hard. It's like, it's too hard. It's no harder. It's just a different tone.
Yeah, well, I would just like sneak them in there. You know what I mean? To be like, they're walking through the forest and, the mists are rising. And, and then all of a sudden, they're at Ravenloft for like a few sessions, River. And then they would try to get out of there as quickly as possible, But I've always loved horror. I just never played a whole lot of horror role-playing games, I would say. But I do like incorporating some horror elements in my role-playing sessions. And I guess maybe that'll bring me to my next question. Do you guys like incorporating horror elements into your other types of role-playing games?
Cody, can I volunteer a question?
Absolutely.
Maybe before we jump into that, because the conversation's going on here, and it's also going on in the chat, and I think it's probably a worthy conversation, which is, when we talked about sci-fi, we had to kind of define what sci-fi is.
Sure.
What is a sci-fi game, right? And I think when it comes to horror gaming, it may be worthy of discussing, of defining what we're talking about, because Deadlands, look, there's a horror element of that, but I don't think we'd call it a horror game. And again, we call World of Darkness, I think most of us seem to agree that World of Darkness probably isn't a horror game, but why? So how are we defining horror? What makes an RPG a horror RPG?
Well, in my view, like a horror RPG would be something like you would see in horror novels or the movies. You'd be living out that experience. Of course, that's a very broad thing. That could be anything. That could be slashers. It could be a zombie attack. It could be the monster under the bed, monster of the week. It could even be like you could do sci-fi stuff with that, right? Horror and sci-fi. Yeah, very easily. Or alien invasion even. That can be horrific. War of the Worlds is pretty horrific, right? Ghost stories.
Genre. There are genre conventions that define it. And, the horror RPGs are just going to lean into those conventions more consistently than a non-horror RPG where you're just going to throw a dash in.
Absolutely.
Sean, are you trying to say that any game could be a horror game?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was leading into, is that like any game could be a horror game. And also, I think a lot of us play a lot more games that have horror elements to them, but aren't pure horror games, right?
I think that makes sense. And I don't know that I agree with the statement that any game could be a horror game, but I will take half a step back and say any genre can be a horror genre, but there's certainly some games that are going to make horror more effective than others, because I guess I sort of feel like if we're talking about the horror genre or talking about horror in any particular game, what we're talking about is a game where the players are presumably, whether you want to call it the victims or the observers or whatever, the horror is outside of the players, outside of the player characters.
Right.
And I think a core element of horror RPG is disempowerment, right? It's the opposite. In traditional gaming, the characters are empowered and they, mow their way through or cleverly and intelligently take on, depending on the game, whatever the opposition is. Whereas I think in horror, the sort of essential element is that rather than being an empowerment fantasy, it's a disempowerment fantasy. Where if you do your very, very, very best, maybe you survive. Or in Call of Cthulhu, if you do very, very, very best, you go nuts instead of being killed. And that's your best option.
Mhm.
So I think maybe across the spectrum of genres that it could fall into when we're talking about horror gaming, we're probably focused, as opposed to horror elements.
Yeah.
We're probably focusing on games where the horror is outside of the player. So that's not means World of Darkness is probably out.
Yeah.
And probably the other component of that is where the basis of the game, the basic idea isn't you're going to go kill the horror. You're going to go kick its butt. Like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the role-playing game, is chock full of horror elements, but it's not a horror role-playing game. It's a butt-kicking superhero RPG where the bad guys happen to be horror,
Supernatural menaces.
right? And for that matter, that probably is what Ravenloft is like too. I mean, because the player characters they're not vampires, but D&D characters are fairly powerful beings, whether or not they can.
But that's kind of the point of Ravenloft, is that you're not powerful.
There's enough that will bitch slap you in Ravenloft. Yeah.
And actually, D&D in general, like old school D&D, according to your definitions, could be defined as a horror game. Because you're not powerful at all, in old school D&D, and you're I mean, people describe it as fantasy Vietnam, and that's almost what it is. If you're playing it like, hardcore by the book, like AD&D first edition or original D&D or BX, it could be pretty horrific,
At level 1 to 3. At level 28 on BX, I'm going to say no.
Oh yeah, but how many people get to level 28?
Where you are.
Right. Well, and I think you hit on a really good point that there are games that are specifically trying to evoke that feel, evoke that style. So I think you touched on a really good point, whereas the normal role-playing game puts the players in the empowered hero scenario, but I like that idea of the disempowered. I don't have this ability. I don't have this thing. But I do think that doesn't mean you can't still have a go kick the monster's butt. There's going to be challenges. You are not necessarily going to be stronger than the monster, but it can still be stop the supernatural menace, stop the thing, but you don't know how you're going to do it. There's a lot more unknown. There's a lot more that the players would have to figure out in that kind of situation.
The odds are stacked against you.
Yeah, it's against you, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, like Evil Dead would be the best example of this, right?
Yeah, I could go with that.
Yeah, because I mean, Ash kicks ass in the end, but like all the odds are always stacked against him.
How many times was his ass kicked on the way?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right. Oh, well, that speaks to his Evil Dead horror or his Evil Dead comedy. When I was a little kid, I was afraid to see it because I was fairly sure it was horror. And then
when you watch,
finally saw it, I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of horror, but it's also really funny from the first one on, in fact. And by the time you get to Army of Darkness, it's a hoot and a half.
Right.
So you know.
Have you ever seen
anyway.
the musical?
So okay. So I think we have at least some sense of what we're talking about when we're talking about horror games or horror elements. It's not just that there's monsters. There's something else there going on in the dynamic of it. So, and I apologize, Cody. Then you were asking.
Oh,
about,
no. Take the wheel, man. Take the
you
wheel.
were asking about horror elements or something, about putting horror elements into games.
Right. Well, what I was saying is I think all of us tend to play more games that have horror elements more so than play strictly horror games. And somebody brought up a good point here, is because it's really hard to do a pure horror role-playing game, because the suspense is kind of missing. I think it's difficult to do. You know, Call of Cthulhu, I think, does it pretty well, but like for the most part, it's a hard genre to do. Like, do you want to play a slasher film? You know, do you want to play Friday the 13th, the role-playing game, or do you want to play, Texas Chainsaw Massacre or any of this stuff? You know, that doesn't sound real fun. But maybe it is. I haven't tried it, but it doesn't sound real fun. But at the same time, like, there's certain types of horror things you could do, like zombie apocalypse can be fun, or like an Evil Dead thing can be fun, right? Like that sounds fun. Or Call of Cthulhu can be fun because you're doing other stuff beside, like there's a goal there. You know what I mean? The goal is not to go insane and not, you have all these systems built into the game that make it interesting and fun.
Right.
I'd say Star Trek could be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, look, well, let's take a look at. I agree with you that I think for horror, short mini campaigns or smaller things would seem to serve horror more than like an ongoing campaign. But then I guess you've got, Masks of Nyarlathotep, one of the greatest world-spanning campaigns that's ever been written, recently re-released, I think, for 7th edition Call of Cthulhu. No, I'm not getting any kickbacks. I'll happily take them. And they and that's a world-spanning game. It is a full campaign that could take a long time to finish. And I do think built into that is the prospect that many characters might not make it to the end, and you need replacement characters. And that's a situation where the players play the campaign, but the characters don't necessarily play the campaign, because the characters may not play the campaign, but the players will.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you maybe can do a longer term a horror campaign if that floats your boat. Again, if you're looking for a disempowerment fantasy rather than an empowerment fantasy.
Well, the Supernatural Menace doesn't have to be world ending either. It can be a slow burn. It can be
Sure.
Lower, like you're investigating a haunted house that, maybe has a real menace, but one that's not going to eat your soul the moment you walk through the door. You can build it over time, but the threat has to be there for the horror to have to really take root as well.
Absolutely.
So balance.
So
Yeah, again, I think for like a campaign play, I think games that are because any pure horror game I've played, again, never lasted very long. It's fun for a few sessions, and then we're like, okay, let's play something else. But like horror elements in a game, on the other hand, can be really cool. Like Ravenloft is not a pure horror game because it's fantasy and it's D&D. So that's fun. That's cool. Because it's got other stuff to it. Deadlands, same thing. It's got all those horror elements. It's got vampires and ghosts and zombies and werewolves and the whole deal. But it's not a pure horror game. Now you can have sessions though of Deadlands that could be like a horror movie. You know what I mean? So in my opinion, like if you want to play like a longer running horror session, that would be the best way to do it. Is just have horror elements in your game or incorporate those things every once in a while.
Yeah, well, I mean, if a little bit of a side conversation that I've been having in chat, somebody mentioned, like putting comedy elements into horror films. Well, that's actually done intentionally. You don't want to have somebody sit there just on edge for 2 hours, because then at some point they will desensitize to those
Yeah,
horror
absolutely.
elements.
In any storytelling, tonal shifts are necessary.
Yeah, so they
Songs
put
are
those
perfect,
comedy
yeah.
bits in. So if you want to run a horror campaign, Call of Cthulhu, Beyond the Supernatural, whatever, slipping in a story where, oh, it turns out it's just, Mrs. Witherspoon's cat that got into the attic. Oh, okay, that can drop that tension, get people interested to come back, but then also even give you ammunition as a game master where, okay, now I have things that I can do to set them off guard. It was Mrs. Witherspoon's cat this time. Next time it's the Thing, in Antarctica. Which one is it going to be the time after that? So
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too. Is I quite like comedy and horror mixed together. Like that's my favorite kind of like horror movies, even if it's not intentional. You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of times, these really old bad horror movies are funny, but I like that. Like it's they still have like these gruesome effects and like, they have some stuff that is pretty horrifying, but at the same time, it's hilarious. It's fun to watch. And I think that can be really fun in a role-playing game too. Having a lot of like comedy involved can make that horror more interesting, because I don't think you're gonna usually get that real like jump scares and all this, the really scary bits you see in the movies and stuff. You're not really going to get that at the table usually. Unless you have Bear doing.
Unless you have Bear.
Zool.
no, there's no
What a
data
beautiful
here.
singing voice you must have, Zuli. What's up, kids? How y'all doing?
What up, Bear?
Nah,
Bear.
Life is live. You got to live it as it happens. So what did I miss? What excitement did I miss?
We've already defined horror.
I'm sorry, what? You defined horror?
And how to solve and how to run it perfectly as a game master.
Okay, so we
All
haven't
right, well,
done.
then, thanks for coming, everybody. Peace, love, gaming. We'll see
I'll
you
be back in
Wednesday.
1 second, kids.
22 minutes. What a record.
No, so we started off talking about what horror role-playing games we've played, what our favorites are. We talked about what defines horror, and basically we came to the conclusion that none of us have played many pure horror role-playing games. I actually think I seem to be the one that's played the most.
All right.
Oddly
So
enough,
give me your pedigree, Cody. What ones have you played?
I've played Call of Cthulhu. I've played
Not
All
horror?
Flesh Must Be Eaten.
Not horror.
Well, it's horror to me, but
Nah,
whatever.
but come on, Call of Cthulhu is cosmic horror at best, and it usually doesn't explain. I'm just saying for me.
Yeah.
All Flesh Must Be Eaten is zombies. Zombies aren't horror. Zombies are gross.
Well, I consider it horror, but
Okay. What else?
but like I've played some games like Ravenloft, which is basically the point being is most of these games aren't pure horror. They just have elements of horror, right?
Yeah.
Like
But have you played either edition of Chill?
no, I've never played Chill.
So I've run both, the Pacesetter and the Mayfair.
Mhm.
Okay. What else? Cult?
I played like 1 or 2 sessions of Cult. Yeah.
It's fucked up, eh?
Yeah.
A lot of people think World of Darkness is horror. I don't think it's horror.
No, we talked about that. Like I brought up World of Darkness. I mean, you can have horror stuff in a World of Darkness game, but
sure.
it's not a horror game.
Bear, did you not read the memo?
The memo? Which memo is that?
The one from management, Bear.
Oh,
No,
I'm
just
sorry.
kidding.
I've severed ties with Lakeside Games. Zeg Media is the shareholders decided we were going to split off and be our own company again. So it was fun while it lasted, but the horror of it all was too much, and we had to establish our own identity. Okay, but look, the thing is okay. So horror, despite people calling it a genre, it is not a genre. It is suspense. It is suspense, and then it's elements are added on, right? So you could have suspense with body horror, suspense with cosmic horror, suspense with grossness. I don't even know what the fuck you call that type of horror. This like the Eli Roth cabin fever type stuff. That's just it's just vulgarity. Right?
Torture porn.
Sorry, what?
Torture porn.
Yeah, gore, right? Gore horror, whatever. But real horror. Name me a movie or a book that isn't a mystery or a suspense or a drama or even a comedy or a coming of age tale with horror elements added in, right? So it's the same thing for the movies in the genre and books as it is for the role-playing games.
Yeah.
So it's hard to call horror anything more than a spice at this point in time. Kind of like how sci-fi. Remember we tried to define sci-fi that night and we realized sci-fi is not really a fucking genre. It's just a trapping, right? It's just a set decoration. Fantasy is just a set decoration. This all comes down to the basic human stories, right? There's those limited amount of stories you can tell: man versus man, man versus beast, man versus nature, blah, 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 right? And then we have our basic plots. But horror lets us try and make it not scary, but touch on that part of the human psyche that is the fear of death. Because that's ultimately what horror is going to be, the fear of death, right? Or the fear of something terrible.
Worse than
So, I'm sorry, was that Sean?
fear of something worse than death.
Or a fear worse than, exactly, a fate worse than death. A fate worse than a fate worse than death. What the fuck is worse than death? But the point is that, so if we take that mentality, there are no horror games. You could do any game as horror. Ravenloft being a perfect example of that, right? It's gothic horror fantasy. Sorry, Brian, you're muted.
Or Star Trek.
Star Trek's a hard one to do horror in. Even they've failed every time they've tried to do it in a movie or a TV show. They fail.
Point of order.
Yes, yes, Prime Minister. Yes, Minister.
Crap, I forget the name. Our first real episode of Sojourner.
Uh-huh.
We're in this ship, and you
Uh-huh.
keep throwing out these little things. I'll admit, I'm also a little bit of a wuss. I admit that, but you keep throwing in these little things. You don't know what's happening. You can't get the power on. Here's this thing that is just sucking all of the power out. Again, me, a little bit of a wuss, had me on edge, even though it's Star Trek and everybody's, it's Star Trek, no big deal. It's just a fun, wagon train in space kind of a thing. No, you were able to take that and push me into that suspense zone, even though everybody else was probably like, no big deal.
But you just hit the word. It was suspense, not horror.
Sure. Fair.
So horror is really hard to do in something like Star Trek because Star Trek tries to ground itself in science. Therefore, there has never been a moment in Star Trek where something horrific has happened and there's no scientific explanation for it, or it's just technology we don't understand, or it's another type of life form, right? It's not like Event Horizon. Now, Event Horizon is sci-fi horror. The Thing is sci-fi horror. What else? What other sci-fi horror is there?
Alien.
Alien, we talked about it.
Alien, the original Alien,
the
is
original.
absolutely cosmic
Classic.
horror.
The haunted
It's,
house
it's
movie.
the indifference of the universe to man, which is why, other than Aliens, all the subsequent bullshit Ridley Scott has done has undid the cosmic horror of it all, right? Because if you go back to the original Alien, the whole point is humans are out there, they find this fucking thing, the universe doesn't care that humans found this fucking thing, this thing's just going to rape holy hell through them. By the time we get to the last of the Scott films, oh no, humans created the creature that created the xenomorph. What? Like, what? That's hack writing. Oh, hang on. We got one of these. Give me a quick second. Thank you so much for the $5. It was tritium poisoning we all saw in that episode of Enterprise. Tritium poisoning. That's the what is that the Vulcan thing? What is that? Explain that
I
to
don't
me.
remember.
'Cause I'm not lexiconic on Enterprise. Sorry to say. But we're talking about horror. So unless it was horrific, there we go. Cell phones takes a shot.
Star Trek Discovery.
Is War of the Worlds really sci-fi horror? I mean, Invaders from Mars. Yeah,
For the time.
I would say Body Snatchers is more horror than War of the Worlds. War of the Worlds.
I would say Body Snatchers is cosmic horror.
right.
Yeah. It's especially the 70s one.
Well, there's the existential element, right?
Yeah.
It's duplicated
Yes.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
everything that's you is being stripped away, and your copy continues on.
I think inherent in these distinctions we're making in the difficulty with Star Trek is certainty versus the uncertain. You may not know what it is in Star Trek, but you Star Trek carries with it the baggage of Star Trek. I think
Yeah.
the Borg is closest that Star Trek ever got to horror because it was body horror. It is body horror
Zombie.
for sure.
It's body horror meets zombie film.
No, not only. It could no. It could absolutely also be stuff being done to you, particularly while you're.
Yeah, no. It's a combination of body horror and zombie film.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
body
So it's,
horror in that the transformation of the being into the Borg, but it's zombie horror in that they are relentless and they will touch you and you'll become infected and then you are lost.
precisely. But even then, it was only so horrible because you knew
Hang
at
on
the
a
core
second.
you're dealing with Star Trek.
Hold that thought, Brian. Why the fuck are you guys talking about BattleTech in the chat? Jesus Christ, BattleTech is like a drug for you people. I swear to God, man. Like you guys gave me shit about talking Star Trek all the time. You guys are like BattleTech addicts.
Well, clearly taking BattleTech away from them it constitutes
Hold on.
horror.
Oh, it'd be
It's-
horror if we took BattleTech. Yeah, BattleTech horror. Oh.
It's Dr. Death in my chat. He's a longtime viewer, came in when I was doing a bunch of BattleTech stuff. So
Okay, that's fair. But I'm just saying,
I
it's
kept it
funny.
to
I'm
chat.
like looking over and people are going like, "They live this, that," and I get like, "The new drop ships are out." The fuck does that have to do with horror?
I want to see those
the
pictures
drop ships
too.
organic creatures that suck you up and then shit you out of an orifice? Like what? You know? That would be horrific. I disagree, Sean. Event Horizon is a fantastic film that was gutted by the fucking studio, but it's still a damn good film. Sorry,
Event Horizon is an excellent
excellent film.
But wow, they pushed it. I mean, I saw
Dude.
the edited, and I haven't even seen the version that
No
I'm like,
one's ever going to see the unedited version because
Okay,
they
so
stored the fucking cans in a fucking Romanian salt mine. So it degraded the film stock to the point where it was unusable.
there
What
you go.
fuck is that, eh? Like that's how much the studio hated that film.
Yeah.
The Black Marauder, aka Dark One BattleTech. Oh, fuck you all ones. But thank you for the $2. How many drops, including this one? 2. Simulated.
Nice.
So there we go. There, you want to play that game? I'll play that game. Excellent compared to movies coming out now. Well, listen, my favorite horror film has always been The Changeling, right? George C. Scott. It's from 1980. Peter Medic was the director. It's a fantastic film. There's no... Okay, I've told this before. I'll tell it again. So basically, without getting too much into the spoilers of it all, guy loses his daughter and his wife, moves to another house. Now there's a ghost he has to deal with. And at one point in time, when he's about the middle point of dealing with all this ghost shit in the house, his daughter's rubber ball comes bouncing into the room. And he's had enough. So he picks up the ball, he leaves the house, he gets in his car, he drives out onto the bridge in Vancouver. So it's the Burrard Street Bridge, but that's neither here nor there. Drives to the bridge, throws the ball over the fucking bridge, drives home, opens the door, the ball comes bouncing down the stairs, and it's wet. Now that's scary.
Nice.
That's what modern film has lost. Mood, ambiance, what have you. So if you're running a horror game, can you set mood and ambiance at a table with a bunch of role players of that level? Because we all know what people try and do when they start to feel uncomfortable and nervous. What's the number one go-to defense mechanism?
They
Making
make
jokes.
jokes. But
Cracking
that
jokes.
means it's working.
Right, but they're going
That
to
you have to allow that pressure valve release when you're running horror, because that means it's working. You're not going to capture. You're not going to create a horror on an art. I don't think you can try to scare players the way a scary movie can scare people.
So
You have to get everyone, and you have to get everyone. Sorry, Brian. Just
No,
one
you're
second.
fine.
And you have to get everyone's buy-in in terms of what you're all collectively intending on creating. That's a threshold without which it's a non-starter. Right from the get-go. So everyone has to be on the same page that they're all looking to kind of create the same thing. I mean, that's all. This is a whole different conversation. But at the table, you're not looking to do what A Haunting of Hill House does to you when you're watching it. It's a
Brian?
different animal entirely.
I've got something to say after. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, so Len, I agree with you. You know, they have to have that release, but the kind of going back to why you were saying where it's not a film, part of the reason that the film does it so well, yes, the film is going to use those jokes as well, but it's going to use it on its time. And so
Absolutely.
the problem at the table is, okay, I'm getting kind of scared. I don't like this. Ha! Look at that thing. It's hilarious. And everybody starts laughing. and the GM, everything the GM did to set that up is now gone. So I think what Bear's trying to get at is how do you corral the players to keep them from setting off the jokes, until you've had the big reveal or whatever it is.
You don't. You let them act as they're going to act. You just have to maintain the tone that you're going for.
That's number one. You never break. You never give in to the humor. Second, and this is what I learned, I ran a chill game in college at radio school, and 2 players. That was it. 2 players. They only had each other. Sent them on one was a professor, the other was an ex-military guy. They were both members of SAVE, which is the secret society and chill of these paranormal investigators. And one of the students asked them to go investigate this house from their grandmother they had inherited that they thought was haunted. So it was like the movie The Entity. They're setting up all their tools and they're doing their stuff and all that. And then eventually there's some weird stuff's happening. We're playing 2 a.m, by the way. Not a fucking 5 p.m. type game. They're checking stuff out, and then they find the diary and they come across the name Ivan. And every fucking time one of them said Ivan, I just went, Ivan, 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 like that. About the 5th time I did it, one of the players' was like, could you fucking stop doing that? Like, stop! Because there was only 2 of them, the joke breaking didn't work. Because there was no gang laughter. There was no safety in numbers. It was just 2 people freaking out with each other. Trust me, you can do it. And you can get House on Haunted Hill level results. But you need buy-in, you need small numbers, and you as the storyteller, never stop. Never break. Never give in. You turn it to 11 and you keep it there for the whole fucking thing. That doesn't mean like constantly like blah, 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 blah. It means you're.
When they joke, you just pause. Running horror is completely different than running almost everything else.
Oh yeah.
You're not you let them do whatever they're going to do.
Or
You
laugh.
simply
laugh
aren't moved by it.
Make them unnerved by your laughter. That's a good one. Make a saving throw.
Yes, but that's the thing. I see what you're saying, Sean, but I disagree with that because once you start
agree with
the
Bear.
mechanical conversation, it takes them out of the fucking horror and into the mechanics of the game. But if you just sit there while they're making their stupid joke and you just wait,
That's exactly correct.
Kind of like Bear does with our streams.
they get fucking self-conscious. They go, and then it brings them back.
It's very hard to create fear around a table where you've got paper and dice. And I think a number of gamers try for that, don't achieve it, and feel like I don't know how to run horror because they're trying to scare their players, and short of hiring somebody to like hide around the corner and occasionally peek their head out like Cody has done for this interview, which is very clever, Cody, and it's definitely unnerving. But other than what's going on behind Cody, that's actually very hard to do in a regular game with people around the table and all that jazz. So what you do is you facilitate mood. You can't scare the players, but every once in a while, they may scare themselves. They may unnerve themselves by your providing them opportunity to imagine what is being described and how they're responding. And you need to provide them with the tone and the negative space to do it. Cody knows there's absolutely nothing behind him, but hopefully all of you guys and the people listening checked behind Cody around that corner when I said that.
And hopefully everybody looked at what my tagline says, because it's vital that you pay attention to that. Don't look behind you.
But hang
on, Glenn, let me just jump on that.
Yeah.
Also, what I found worked really well was taking things from my experience that were horrific in the real world for me. And one example was when I had to spend some time living at my aunt's house, which was a farmhouse in the country. Like, I live in the country, but I lived in the town. And I had to go spend time living at my aunt's house one winter outside of the town, like 5 miles from the town, out on a fucking patch, the fucking bay, you name it, right? And in my bedroom that she put me in this old fucking house she bought, there was a rocking chair. And every time I would go to fucking bed, I'd be staring at that rocking chair like, you motherfucker, because it was right in front of the window, and there were the branches hitting the window all night. I'm like, that fucking thing rocks. I'm fucking gonna walk the 5 miles back to my parents' house. Fuck this shit. No. So I put that in the game. One of the guys' room was exactly that room, and I described the thing in the rocking chair. But the difference is, eventually the chair started rocking. And that player literally stood up and went, no, and did this whole body dance and just like, no, because I described it. But the way I described it was a personal experience. So it came from very deep inside me. And as a result, it was very, very cool. So if you're going to do horror, try and find the places in your mentality where you've been scared on that level and see if you can bring that to the descriptions. And you can get inside people's fucking heads, man. And once you're in, once you've got them once, they're yours for the rest of the night. But you can't do a campaign. It's like X-Files. It's too much. It just starts to become, it gets worn out. It stops losing its effect because it becomes commonplace. But a one-shot or a two-parter, you can do a lot with that. Now, all one said, hang on, film does horror well, as unlike an RPG, player characters, unlike characters, have agency and predictability. Yeah, but when you take away their agency in-game, when all the stuff they do that's supposed to work doesn't work, you take away the tools, now what happens to those characters? And
films are also heavily plotted and scripted.
That's right? True.
They're paced, they're structured very specifically for the audience. A game is not. A game is a game. You've got any number of variables that are going to change the course of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and also taking away that agency is, for a role-playing game, is very dangerous, because nobody wants to be railroaded. Nobody wants to, like we talk about like the illusion of choice, but then it just gets back to the railroading. So I'm not saying you shouldn't take the agency away, in a horror situation, but you just have to be very careful with it. Otherwise, you're going to end up pissing off your players.
Well, give me an example of taking away the agency that would be railroading.
Go, Len. I don't have anything.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to gently disagree with you, Brian, because I think when you're playing a horror game, you understand walking into it that, again, this is a disempowerment fantasy. Now, that's not to say that you want to be on a railroad. Like, well, first you guys are going to go. Obviously, you guys are going to go to the haunted house, right? No, we're not. No, we're going to go to the library and do research. No, but you really want to go to the haunted house. Okay, that's railroading. That doesn't help create any tension or whatever. But on the other hand, great, we shoot the werewolf. It doesn't do anything.
But we have silver bullets.
I know.
Not all legends are true.
Maybe you should have gone to the library instead of the haunted house.
It doesn't do anything. Which word in that sentence is giving you trouble?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, so that's what I think Bear is referring to by taking away agency, which is, again, it's a disempowerment fantasy. So understanding that you will likely be at the mercy, to whatever degree, of whatever is happening.
Oh my God. You saw the werewolf running across the lawn. You unloaded your shotgun into it. You hit that motherfucker. You get over there, and it's not the werewolf. It's the groundskeeper that met you at the front of the house this morning. What?
Yeah.
So I didn't take away their agency, but now their reality is questionable. Now they don't know what they can trust anything anymore that I described to them as being what it is. They start doubting themselves. They start creating the horror in their mind. That's the secrets, it's let them. So the oldest fear in humankind is fear of the unknown, right? Jaws. Spielberg wanted to show us the shark in the first act. It would have just been a fucking Roger Corman film at that point in time with a big budget. We would have seen the shark. It's a rubber shark. That's so stupid. They put the thing in the fucking water. What happens? It sinks in short circuits. They're like, fuck. It's going to take a week to fix this thing, and we've got a shooting schedule to stick to. So now Spielberg has to get creative. POV shots, a fin in the water, things like that. And then with that beautiful dun, 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 dun. By the time we get to the third act, we don't give a fuck what that shark looks like because we've created this monster in our head that's huge. Jeepers Creepers. The monster wasn't supposed to be shown until the third act. You're supposed to think it was a human serial killer all the way along, and then it's a demon. But the director was so fucking in love with the costume for the demon, he shows it in the first act. Therefore, not a scary film, because the human mind creates much better monsters than any special effect. So that's what you do to your players. You put little hints, little moments, little deceptions, little twists, little sounds, and let them start building the horror in their head. By the time you reveal what's going on, it doesn't matter what's going on anymore because they've died 1,000 times in their minds. Fear is the little death. You understand? What was that for, Len?
TED Talk.
Yeah, thank you for attending my TED Talk.
No, but as it happens, again, I agree with everything Bear said about that.
This is a rare one, kids. Mark this one down on a calendar. Len and I have not disagreed yet tonight. Holy
yeah,
fuck.
no, we're
That or he's been body snatched. One of the two.
Which one of us has been body snatched? I was gone for quite a while at the start because I was busy.
Is that a vegetable pod in the back there, Bear?
What was that Dick Van Dyke?
I'll never tell.
What was the Dick Van Dyke Body Snatchers episode where they all drink from the back of their heads or something?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember that.
Oh my god!
Oh no, it was you're talking the Dick Van Dyke Show.
That's exact. Yeah, the Dick Van Dyke.
No,
show.
it's the I don't remember the name of it, but it's the one with the walnuts.
I think that's God. I saw that a long time ago.
I just remember there was one episode they open up the hall closet and Mary Tyler Moore comes sliding out on this just avalanche of walnuts from the closet. So. Oh yeah,
horrific.
No. Okay, first off, she was gorgeous, but
she
that's
was
a separate issue.
There we go. There we go.
No, it was. Oh, now I want to look at that because
that was an amazing. I remember as a little kid that scared me, and then looking back, it also cracked me up.
The movie that scared me the most as a kid was "Don't Be Afraid of the Dark," which was about the woman in the house, and then she's like, something's going on, and it turns out they're these little fucking Play-Doh men that are coming out of the fucking sewer grate in the basement, and the light fucks them up. So at the end, when they're dragging her down to the basement, she's taking pictures with a camera to try and stop them. You're getting these still frames of these little fucking demon creatures. I was like 10 when that movie played on TV.
Oh, wow.
It fucked me up, man. I wouldn't go to the basement for a good year.
You guys watch Doctor Who?
Which one?
The newer one. There's a specific episode, but there's an episode from David Tennant's era, the 4th season, called Midnight, where he's on he's basically on a tour bus, a space tour bus, not an earthbound one, and an entity possesses one of the passengers and starts repeating everything everybody else says, and it's a pure acting episode. There's minimal special effects. It's just like it could have been a stage play. So brilliant. Check it out. And it's creepy. It's creepy on a subversive level because all this actress does is imitate everybody else, just copy. Every time they speak, it's simultaneous. And nice. Then the gap between what they say and the repeat narrows and gets closer and closer until she's eventually right on top of it. Just really well done. Check it out. It's from season 4.
Very cool.
Midnight.
Yeah, Blink was good. Dale mentions Blink, but much like the Borg, the Weeping Angels were overdone.
Yeah, they
like
they're ridiculous. The first 2 appearances, like chef's kiss. Then after that, done.
Just redundant. But that's the problem. That's why you can't reuse the same monsters all the time because they lose their fear because you become acclimatized to them, right? If I was going to run the Alien RPG, you would never see a fucking xenomorph. I'd find some other cosmic horror to throw at you, but you would never see a xenomorph because you are expecting a xenomorph. You're waiting for the xenomorph. You're waiting for that. Well, fuck you. Friends wanted to play a Colonial Marines Cyberpunk game one time, so I ran it. I've told this story before. They spent the whole fucking session hunting this xenomorph, and it was taking them out one at a time in shadows, and they were freaking out. And then when they got to the final confrontation, it was a fucking predator. And the player almost shit himself. He was like, what the fuck? It's like he was because he was so xenomorph, and nope, fuck you. Because in horror, unlike Star Wars or Star Trek, subverting expectations is exactly what you should be doing at all times. The minute they feel comfortable in their knowledge, that's when they need to find out, I was wrong. Oh, fuck. Because when they're all in on their plan to fight the werewolf, and then the werewolf turns out to be Yana Galachi Skinwalker. Oh, shit. You know what I mean? Or they're all prepped for the vampire, and it's not a fucking vampire, it's a revenant. You know what
But
I mean?
it's
Like,
also done in a way that's not a cheat.
no, it's not a cheat. No.
No,
Follow your rules.
yeah, absolutely. You still have to follow the rules. You can't cheat. You can't just yoink. Oh no, it's actually
No, it wasn't the Frankenstein monster. It was the creature from the Black Lagoon. There's not even lagoons around here, man. Like, yeah, you're right on that.
Well, and that's one thing I think for me. If I were to try and run a game like this, I would want to avoid a licensed property, just because of that. Like, going back beyond the supernatural, it's just, hey, here's a generic game, run it for, use it for whatever horror you want. It's like, okay, cool. I can come up with anything. Now it will require more work as a game master, but you're not going to get your players coming in expecting a xenomorph. They have no idea what they're expecting.
You ever see what's that Rutger Hauer Flooded in London movie? Split Second?
Split Second. Yeah.
We need
No.
bigger guns. Bigger guns.
Man, when you get to the point where you realize it's not a fucking genetically engineered serial killer, but some sort of weird fucking space monster, it's just like, what the fuck? Like, it really, and it works, but it throws you. You're just, that first time you realize it, you're like, what? Okay. Or conversely, what is that fucking Bill Paxton, Matthew McConaughey frailty? When you end that movie, you literally are asking yourself the simplest question of the movie, which is, well, were they really possessed or not?
But it's
We're
clear,
all-
they make it clear that they were.
Well, no, they make it clear that he believes they were and he's seeing they were. But the question is he fucking crazy like his dad? Did his dad make him as crazy as he was at that point in time, right?
I haven't seen that movie in 20 years, but I'm pretty sure it was pretty explicit that
I felt at the end it was like, well, we're seeing it from his perspective, so it could be bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, that was how I felt at the end.
depending on but he wasn't really established as an unreliable narrator, and that's it.
Except he spends half the film thinking he's the other character. So that makes him an unreliable narrator.
He spends half the film pretending but not thinking, like he's tricking.
No, we are thinking. So we as the audience are thinking, which makes him an unreliable. Anyway, we could argue that that's film argument. That's a whole other
unreliable audience. Yeah,
and we're an unreliable audience. Fuck us.
That movie actually that there's an example of a bit of a cheat, because they kind of they cheat in the beginning. They make it clear that he is the other brother, but he's not. It's like an absolute lie. And they don't give you any clues or hints that, oh, he might be bullshitting. It's just at the end they pull the rug out and say, oh no, he was the other brother, not the evil brother, right?
Yeah, this still worked. It worked really well.
It worked well enough. It wasn't a horrible movie, but I remember being annoyed at that revelation. It was a bit clunky, the reveal.
It was the 90s. I was just happy to have a good movie. So, hey, a good movie, and it's the 90s. Yay! Because I'm sorry. After the 80s, the 90s was kind of a dead zone for good movies. You know, there were some good ones, but there weren't a lot.
Have you seen the 2020s?
Dude,
No, I haven't.
speaking of horror, but that's the thing. I go every now and then, like I watch, there's a channel I subscribe to on YouTube called Joe Blow, right?
Mhm.
And every now and then they'll do the what the fuck happened to or this, that, and thing. But they'll also talk about modern horror films. And some of them I'll be like, oh, that looks interesting. I'll go watch it. And I'll be like,
What the fuck?
what the fuck is wrong with everybody today? Like, why do they think this shit is scary or anything? This shit's not scary.
Have you seen The Haunting of Hill House?
Yes.
Because
The Netflix-
I think it's one of the
fine.
best horror stuff I've seen in like a really long time.
It was
I put it up
fine.
there. Oh, really? That's it? I got to tell you.
Flanagan's
I know a
good
couple of
because
people who.
he's
Sorry.
Flanagan is good with his adaptations because he understands human drama.
Yes.
Yeah, and
that's
that was his
why it
first
works.
one.
But they weren't scary. That's my point. They were disturbing. They were very human, and I like that about them. But they weren't scary. And
I
then,
think Haunting of
and
Hill
then
House is
once I
one of
noticed my
the-
first ghost in the background, I found myself tuning out scenes looking for ghosts all the time. And then, oh, there's one. You know, and it was weird. It was a weird experience, that show. Now, Paranormal Activity, the first one, not the theatrical cut. Have you guys ever seen the pre-Spielberg cut?
No.
Okay, so you've seen the movie, right? Paranormal Activity.
No.
At the very end, what happens? She goes out, she comes back, and she throws the body at the camera, and then she demon faces the camera. The original cut, she's killed Micah downstairs. She comes back upstairs and she sits on the end of the bed. at the edge of the bed. Timer goes, boom, 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 stops. You hear the front door open, the friend come in. Hey, guys, Micah, freak out, run. Zoom, door opens. Police, the police, we're here, blah, 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 blah. She gets up. What? She walks over to the door to the bedroom. As the cops are coming up the stairs, they're like, don't move. Remember the thing with the closet in the background where the light would come on in the closet? The light goes out, the door slams, and the cops shoot her, cut to black.
Yeah.
Much more effective.
Yeah.
Much better ending. Because it wasn't that Hollywood jump scare bullshit. It was like, yeah, and all the papers are going to say tomorrow is crazy woman killed by police after murdering boyfriend. And that's horror. When you can think about any fucking murder you've heard about in this world, real world murder, and then think to yourself, but what if it was a ghost, a demon, a monster, and we just never knew, and we just saw it as a crazy homicide? That becomes good. That's in our fucking heads, right? That's oh shit. That's what Blair Witch gave us. The original Blair Witch.
Blair Witch gave me a migraine. That's
Oh yeah? Didn't like Blair Witch?
No, the shaky cam. I got motion.
Shaky cam found footage guy, huh?
Yeah. I didn't mind it. You guys see VHS? The first one?
Yeah.
You seen it, Cody?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
It was all right. It was pretty good.
Could have been better, but was all right.
That's starring James Woods.
Sorry?
Starring James Woods, or am I thinking of?
No, you're thinking
No.
of Videodrome.
That's what I'm thinking of. Video.
You're thinking of a whole other Cronenberg thing.
Whole other thing.
But this is a found footage where it's just they watch short vignettes on VHS tapes, and then there's the wraparound story. It's okay. There's some of the stories are weak, some of the stories are good. Not every movie can be Creepshow. I mean, let's just face it. At the end of the day, Creepshow is perfection from start to finish, but it's not scary. Creepshow is
Awesome.
Did you guys see Smile? Came out a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I heard about it. I didn't see it.
Yeah, see,
Yeah, it's
that's
pretty
a movie that started off great and then just degenerated into silliness. The conceit is that people die and before they people commit suicide in front of other people, and then they have this creepy grin that's like smiling as they do it. It's
Yeah.
and then the person who sees it is now being haunted, which of course turns out to be a supernatural entity that uses the smile to creep them out and traumatize them. And first half of that movie, I'm like, this is interesting. I like where they're going with it. I like they're exploring the trauma of the person. The actor was really good. And then it's just, as you say, the jump scare is just stupid after stupid. It's like, all right, I burst out laughing at one point. The girl I was with was like, why are you laughing? This is scary. I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah. There's been a few horror films where like something's happened. I've just started laughing at people in the room are like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, that shit's funny. Like in the Final Destination film where the plate glass falls on the guy and squishes him, I'm howling because it's the funniest visual gag I've seen in ages. And they're like, that's disgusting. I'm like, no, that's stupid, but fucking funny, But like for jump scare quality, okay, first of all, Final Destination as a film series is really weird. Especially when they had the second one. I was like, what? Final Destination 2? But it's the Final Destination. What's the next one? Final Destination 3? Penultimate Destination? Final Destination 4? Are we there yet? Like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on? But in the one they shot in Vancouver with the truck that loses the logs, the one that makes everybody get fucking paranoid when they're behind a lumber truck now on the highway, when the pregnant lady is in the van and she's stuck in the thing with the airbag and they're trying to get her out so they get the jaws of life, and they hit the jaws of life and the airbag explodes and slams her head into the pipe that comes through her head in the front. That I didn't fucking see coming. You know what I'm saying? And that's when a jump scare works well.
Yes.
When they lull you into this scene where you're like, okay, what the fuck's happening? And like, whoa, Jesus Christ. That works.
Let me go back to Hill House. The jump scare where the two sisters, this is like in episode 7. In Hill House, by the way, episode 2 is the scariest by far. But in episode 7, where the two sisters are arguing in the car and the jump scare happens there, that's one of the best jump scares I've ever seen ever. If you're not remembering it, then maybe, but where the two sisters are arguing and then the dead sister comes out from between them in the car.
Yeah.
That was an amazing jump scare.
No, that was a very good jump scare.
That was an excellent jump scare.
Psychological horror, and I've talked about this before. Who here has seen the movie Session 9? Okay.
I don't think I've seen it.
Session 9 is a movie about a construction team being hired to go clean asbestos out of an old asylum before they tear it down, convert it, or whatever it's going to be. That's all you need to know. I saw this movie with my girlfriend at the time and my best friend, and we walked out and we were like, that is the scariest fucking movie I have ever seen in my life. We were like, holy fuck. Told friends. They then went and rented it on home video and watched it and went, it's not that scary. And I went, yeah, because you were in your living room. You could pause it. You could stop, turn on the lights, go get a fucking snack, go to the bathroom. We were in a theater terrified to leave our seats for 2 fucking hours. Because one, we didn't want to miss anything because the story's unfolding and it's a really interesting, intricate little tale. And at the same time, we're scared. Watch it like that. If you're going to watch it, put those parameters on yourself. No stopping, no telephones, no talking, no nothing. And just watch it. All the lights off. It's a fantastic fucking psychological drama that can just get in your fucking head. That's the key to horror in anything, is getting in the head. That's why All Flesh Must Be Eaten is not a horror game to me, because it's just not fucking zombies.
And since getting in the head is essential to horror, Full Metal Dragon has to watch the movie Phantasm.
Yeah, I was about to say
The
the movie with
movie
the
will
killer
get that
Christmas
joke.
ornaments.
Yeah, Christmas Ornaments, exactly. Phantasm's a weird fucking film.
Yeah, it is.
It's really weird.
Which one
But
are they
it's
at? They
fun.
up to like 5 now?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the name of the big guy? What's he called? Fuck.
Angus Scrim.
Angus Scrim. There
That's
we
the
go.
actor's name. The tall man is something.
The tall man is the character, but Angus Scrim, what a name. Even the guy's name is awesome.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, like Friday the 13th was never scary. Nightmare on Elm Street, they weren't scary. Like that schlock gore horror stuff wasn't scary. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 was scary.
Yeah.
And it was scary because they didn't use a soundtrack to prep your emotions, and they just did ultra violence out of nowhere. When the first time we see Leatherface, when he opens the door and just fucking clubs the guy on the head, and then he drops his legs kicking as he pulls him in and closes the fucking door again. Jesus Christ.
It's my favorite horror movie of all time. And I still think it has an impact because, now it's been like replicated 100 times. So it everybody's like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But like, the thing I love about Texas Chainsaw Massacre is it seems like a real event. Seems like that's some shit you could have got into. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like
it was based loosely on something that really happened, wasn't it?
Very loosely on Ed
very
Gein.
loosely.
They're all very loose, but yeah.
Yeah. But
And
definitely.
Ed Gein is their favorite guy to use for horror references. Like the American film writers are just obsessed with Ed Gein for some reason. What's the town that feared sundown? You guys ever see that fucking movie?
No.
Check it out. We'll talk about it. I won't tell you anything about it. Check it out. It's schlocky, but it's got something to it. Like you just go, okay, yeah, I could see how that fucking works.
One that always got me as a kid, and even as an adult, I rewatched it, was because the tone is consistent, even though the movie is schlock, is Carpenter's Prince of Darkness.
I love that movie.
Yeah, great.
Love that movie.
It's got this relentless tone that always gets you, and a couple of good twists like that. At the end when he's reaching for the mirror.
Fuck, dude, come on! That movie is just so well done. It's his Apocalypse trilogy is a really good trilogy of films to watch, right? So it's The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness. He calls them his Apocalypse trilogy.
I've got a message for you. You're not going to like it.
It
was so good.
Yeah. What's that? Are you a fan of Sutter Kane? Just fuck, I love In the Mouth of Madness. It's such a good movie. I saw it in the theater, not knowing what the fuck I was getting into. I was just like, it's a Carpenter film. It will be fun. And I walked out going, Jesus Christ, the fuck did I just watch? Like,
You know how many times I say, in fact, you will not be saved? And no one has any idea what I'm talking about. You will not be saved by the god plutonium. In fact, you will not be saved.
Sort of sidebar to that. That one character who was possessed and will not be saved. Remember earlier in the movie, he's like, "Oh my God, that's caca," right? He's talking about he's poo-pooing their theory. That is something my niece always used to say. "Oh my God, that is caca," but she had never seen the movie.
Oh wow!
Show her that clip. It's like, that's you.
I'm still waiting for a good alien abduction movie. There still has not been made a good. There's been moments of ones that have been made that you go, oh, that's not bad. But overall, I still have yet to see one that is like, oh, fuck. Like at the end of it, you're just like, oh, fuck. Like not Communion didn't have it. Fire in the Sky didn't have it. The Fourth Kind or whatever it was called with Mila Jovovich. They all had moments, but they just like no one's made one that makes you go, oh fuck. Then I saw one a couple of years ago. It's an indie film. I can't remember what the fuck it's called. It's about a guy who figures out that he's being abducted, so he manages to set up a body cam, and then later rewatches the footage. And even that one falls apart in the third act. But up until the third act, I was kind of like, okay.
That sounds solid.
Okay. And then the third act, it falls apart a little bit. But I'm just waiting for one, man. I'm just waiting for like a really good fucking No One Will Save You. That's the new one, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
No One Can. It's called No One Can Save You. Is that what it's called?
I think so. I don't know.
It's again.
Yeah.
The third act falls apart because they all do something in the third act that they make the biggest mistake in these alien abduction films. They try to explain it to you in the third act.
Well,
They
that's
try
terrible.
and give you an answer in the third act.
Oh,
Well, it
You
ties
should
back to
never get the answer.
the idea of Star
that's
Trek.
the horror.
Yeah, Star Trek, because it's too scientific. The alien abduction, they always lean heavily on the science aspect, which will cut the horror, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so.
Like in Fire in the Sky, there's that moment where they find him after he calls them. Travis calls them, and they go to the gas station where he is. And as they're all freaking out, he's looking at the window, freaking out. And when they show us the window, you see the 3 finger marks, like the hand is like this kind of fingers, and it's a smudge. That's amazing. You know what I mean? Because that's like, oh shit, that's some mood and ambiance. That's really great.
Full Metal Dragon mentions The Mist. I really like The Mist, but the horror element doesn't come from the supernatural creatures. It comes from the humans.
It comes from the end. And even King himself, after watching it, said, that's a way better ending than I wrote. Because it is. Because in the short story, they just go into the
They
mist
just go
and are
into the
trying to
mist
find
and that's it.
civilization, right?
Fabulous.
You get to the end of the mist when he pop, and then the mist is gone.
But that's
It's
not
like,
a scary entity. That's more of the tragedy. Like he's totally snapped.
But it's human horror.
Yeah, the horror in that movie comes from the interaction of the people and how the people degenerate.
If you guys
Still
read
good.
that Stephen King,
Still absolutely good. And I think that's where you can really go in RPGs. You can go in the horror is make sure to punch the evil that is perpetrated by fellow man.
Yeah. And with zombies, always outnumber them. Slowly. Let them have their successes as they're trying to get out of the building and they're killing zombies. And then eventually there's just more fucking zombies than they have bullets. And eventually they're going to put themselves in a corner. And now you've got zombies. They're fucked at that point. Sorry, you were about to say that?
Shotgun Diaries.
Which one?
Shotgun Diaries. It's a game by John Wick. It's a very simple game. The rules are incredibly simple. And there's a zombie clock in it. And the zombie clock moves based on real life sitting playing the game time. And it is an excellent, inexorable slide towards people getting eaten by zombies and the drama that's unfolding until then. It's called Shotgun Diaries. It's very inexpensive, and I would highly recommend it. And in fact, that leads me to, we've been talking a little sort of circling about this, but how do we kind of lasso this one in and bring it back towards the horror gaming? Think about what we've been talking about here, and how do we bring that to the table? What things can we bring to the table on that? And I think one of them that we all agree on is that horror shouldn't have explanations. That the more mysterious we keep it, probably the more effectively it dances in the players' heads. And as we've already established, that's about the only way you're going to create that horror around the table. You have to dance in players' heads.
I want to answer something. Hang on. Shauner said, what would make a good abduction movie? The best version of abduction I've ever seen on film or television is season 2 of the original run of Twin Peaks. The owls are not what they seem. Because it tells you nothing, but something is going to fuck on out there in the woods. I spent the entire time watching it going, holy fuck, is this all about alien abduction? I was right in, and then no, it's all fucking weird tulpa shit. And I'm like, okay, whatever, I don't give a shit. there was that just that brief window where I'm like, holy fuck, this has actually been all about alien abduction? Like, that's insane. Nope. It's all about weird Tibetan mysticism. Okay, fuck, never mind.
So I just got a notification. This is going to go into existential horror, but Henry Kissinger just died. Now he's going to haunt all of us.
Henry Kissinger just died?
Yep.
Wow, one of my teachers is going to go party tonight. When Nixon died, his friend said, "Let's go drink," and he said, "No, let's wait till Reagan's dead." When Reagan died, his friend said, "No, we're going when Kissinger's dead." So apparently the two of them will be out drinking tonight. One of my college teachers. So
There
good
you
for
go.
him, I guess.
He's 100 years old. So
What about evil? You know what I mean? Fuck. Okay, so don't explain anything. What else? Get in their heads, never break character, be relentless. Len?
Well, obviously, since I'm a rules guy, I'm always going to bring something about rules into it in terms of the conversation. But I think, funny enough, it keys in very closely to keep it mysterious, to the powerlessness. I think that games with a whole lot of crunchy rules that are actually much more difficult to do horror effectively. I know this is heresy, but I actually don't think Call of Cthulhu mechanically is the best system for horror. I think it's great because of how fragile the characters are. In that respect, it's excellent. But I think games that are much looser in rules and much more vague in rules are probably more effective. One, because once you're thinking about rules, you're immediately out of tone and setting and mood.
Yeah.
So the easier the rules are, the simpler the rules are. It doesn't matter. This is not a game about simulating precision tactics and what. It's just not what the game's about. So it's okay if the rules are gentler and more abstract, but they also get out of the way, so you're more focused on the tone and all that good stuff.
There's something else that like Call of Cthulhu has the insanity mechanic. Beyond the Supernatural has horror checks. Once you put a mechanic to that simulates the horror, you as you say, you sort of double down on removing the horror. It's like, you're scared. It's like, no, I'm not. Fuck you, right?
D6, best horror game going, right there. We've answered our question. Simplest mechanic possible. We'll never make them fucking break thought about the mechanic because they're just rolling some dice and adding up some numbers. Sorry, I will take every chance possible to explain how D6 is the greatest goddamn role-playing game ever made.
Well, but you would need a horror. Like somebody mentioned that Alien has a stress mechanic. You know, and again, it's not that you can't have mechanics. You can have, as long as the mechanics are smooth and easy to interface with without a whole lot of assessing mechanically, that's fine. You know, there can be some mechanics for when people lose their shit. You know, that's okay. Or when people start losing their grip with reality a bit, depending on what the specifics are. So I think that's okay. Black Star is an excellent horror game. Seriously.
Weird.
No, only when you add in the rules from the companion. That's when it becomes a good horror game.
You know, someone brought up Dread, and that's the horror game with the Jenga tower. And that's an interesting. This is an interesting conversation that I wanted to have in this before we walked away from it, which is, the mechanics of I don't know if it's Dread or if it's Chill, but one of them is the one where you have build a Jenga tower, and every time you try to do something, you have to pull a piece, and when it collapses, bad things happen or whatever. And I guess the idea behind it is you're trying to recreate the tension, but you're creating it physically in the context of removing that Jenga piece. Does that work, or is that, I don't know, so ham-handed that it actually pulls you out of the horror? I don't know what the answer is to that. I was wondering what you guys felt about it.
I'd say the latter.
Yeah, it's a gimmick, but
it's kitschy.
I think maybe once for a specific scenario that's related in context, great. But if it's the game every time you have to play Jenga to get through a scenario, that'll get old fast.
Well, but I think it goes back to the point of like using jokes and laughter to defuse that tension. If you're using it all the time, every single move is the Jenga tower. Well, that can throw it off and get people used to it. But if it's something where now I don't know how you would bring a Jenga tower in just for the big bad to add in some extra tension.
But if it's climactic, yeah, it'll work. This is one-time climactic thing where one of the players has to pull those Jenga blocks out, or the whole thing collapses, literally and figuratively. Then yeah, I think it absolutely can work. But I wouldn't want to just keep using it every time.
I mean, I think that's the mechanic for, again, I don't recall if it's dread or chill, but that is the mechanic, the action resolution mechanic. And I think the idea is you're not supposed to reach for it very often. It should be only, in a pivotal moments as you move through the game. My friend and I play a lot of drunk Jenga, so I don't know how that would work.
Ganja, that's a whole different thing, man.
For me, no. So there's a third edition of Chill that came out, and my friend knew the writers, so she told me about it, and I was talking to them. I said, "Oh, what are you guys going to do with? Are you going back to the original pace setter? Or are you just doing the Mayfair over again?" "Oh, no, we've got this thing where you have to flip your stress tokens and this and that." And I was just like, cool. All right, well, good luck with your Kickstarter. And I had no interest in it. The minute there were widgets and chits to take care of, I'm not going to be scared because I'm going to be focusing on all those little things in front of me as a player.
Right.
You know, that's not scary. That's mechanical. That's bookkeeping. You know.
Yep.
Well, the horror and the fear should be unexpected, and it should come at the times they least expect it. That's what makes it. That's what makes great horror great, right? Yeah. Is when you least expect it, right? Like those jump scares you were describing. That's what makes those effective. Is when you're least expected. So if you're messing around with these mechanics and stuff all the time and fiddling around with fiddly bits on the table or fucking playing Jenga, then it's going to remove the horror aspect because you're so distracted by all this stuff.
The only horror part of the Jenga is my cat's chasing the pieces when it fucking breaks onto the. They're like, fuck, get it from the cat. Like there's no horror.
Your cat's going to knock it down.
There's a jump scare.
Yeah.
You know. Now, Nerds Nerd says scaring the character instead of the player. I disagree.
No.
I think if the players are invested, they will react as their characters, and you can get into the fear at that point in time. Because otherwise, it's just theater.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think you can scare the player. I think the player scares the player. I think you can create the opportunity by dancing in their heads to allow the players to explore that feeling themselves if they feel comfortable enough to do so. You can nudge them in the direction. And again, the mechanic may be helpful to facilitate certain kinds of horror games. And I know if you want to facilitate characters making bad decisions because of terror, like the alien panic mechanic.
Stress.
Something like that's probably effective.
I don't know. Never run it, so I don't know. I mean, it looks okay on paper, but it also looks like a tracking. So no, she meant game widgets that track fear. They track the player's fear, character's fear, but break the immersion of fire. Exactly. The more business with the character sheet or the mechanics, as you said, Len, the player has to do, the less immersed they're going to be in the moment because they can see it. If you just let the fear build through the narrative and the events, man, you don't need a metric. You don't need a fucking tracker for that. They'll scare themselves, and you'll have a great time.
So I don't remember one of the most effective horror games I've witnessed. I don't remember what podcast it was on. There was a podcast where they ran a series of Cthulhu adventures, not published by Cthulhu, but by a third party. And the series was framed, everybody made multiple sets of characters. And the first set of characters were characters who were getting together for a book club that was meeting like in the basement of a bookstore. And there were these knickknacks and then they would switch to the characters in the story that's being read. And then they would play that story with those characters.
Interesting.
And then they would go back to their framing characters just to finish the conversation about what happened. And there were 4 adventures, 4 basically stories that were read. And as each story was read, they played the framing characters going to the book club. the world in which the framing characters lived was slowly warping. The framing characters never made any roles. They just role played walking to the store and getting to the store and going downstairs into the basement. And what was there in the basement and what was around them and what was around in the city they were going to. That changed each time. Until by the end of the fourth story, they pulled back again to the framing characters one last time. And the long and short, if I remember this correctly, and things were obviously getting warped and twisted. By the time of the end of the final story, where you're in that final scene of the framing characters, like the framing characters come to the awful realization that their world, their experience has already been consumed by this darkness, and that they are just a memory of something that has already consumed them, that's going back over it, and they begin back at the beginning as the thing goes through it again. But any chance they had of trying to normal, and it's a very slow sort of transition, but I thought it was an amazing framing vehicle for that sort of slow descent into the Cthulhu sort of melting of reality.
Sure.
Structured. It was a very impressive structuring that in an RPG context. It was a very interesting approach to it.
That is very interesting.
And I was wowed by the end of it.
I ran a Buffy campaign back in like 2000, and I learned a very valuable lesson. We played our first session where they were all college students, and they were dismissive to authority figures, and they were, I do my own thing, and no one runs me, and there was no buy-in. So I said, guys, we're going to start again. I'm going to remake your characters as high school students. Instant buy-in, because they all got into their characters, right? So suddenly the sheriff's involved. They're like, oh, fuck, I'm going to die. The fucking sheriff's involved. My parents are going to fuck you. Like they bought in. So then it was easier to get them to buy into the stories, right? So I think it also comes down to what kind of characters are going to be in the story. Because if you have a bunch of adults as the characters and hyper-professionals, they're going to act like hyper-professionals. You know what I mean? They're going to be like, I'm a fucking king of my domain. I'm the greatest of whatever I am. But if you have characters that aren't super competent people, just people. How many horror movies have you seen that have a Navy SEAL team? How many horror movies have you seen that are a bunch of kids? Right? So when we're talking about taking away agency, you're not taking away agency, but you're reducing the agency they can have, and that has to start during character creation. It's why Call of Cthulhu does not scare me. It's why Call of Cthulhu will never scare me. There is nothing scary about a nameless, indescribable horror, because it's indescribable. I'm Sir Winston Northern Falkentorkel, and I'm a professor of ancient Asiatic Orientalism. God. I'm Steve, and I got a fucking BMX, and I'm trying to get my buddy's house, and now I'm pretty sure there's a witch chasing me through the woods. Fuck. You know what I mean? Big.
That's okay. We didn't like Steve anyways.
Hey, come on, man. This is mean. It's just mean. But Stranger Things, that's why Stranger Things, the first season of Stranger Things, worked so well. Because it was just kids. Right? Invaders from Mars works so well because it's just a kid.
That's why the first episodes of Hill House worked very well, because they're still kids at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dog Soldiers is a great movie, all ones, but it's not scary. Especially when Spoonie dies and his last words are, I hope I give you the shites. That's not scary. And that's the problem I find with a lot of modern horror, is it's more tongue-in-cheek. Like that American Horror Story. You ever guys watch that series?
Yeah.
Not scary.
Yeah.
It's goofy. Yeah. Especially the 80s one, and the American Horror Story VHS, or it was called. Did you watch that one, Cody?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Where they kill Kajakugu. Fuck off.
I would be too shy to do that. Sorry.
Me.
Yeah.
Sean, Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
I was just commenting on genres. I find the prospect of working in IT very scary.
Yes. Because you want to talk about horror, talking to people who spent their entire lives working with computers and aren't good with people.
And yes,
did y'all watch that? Did y'all watch that Choose Your Own Adventure horror movie? It was like I think it's on Netflix.
Bandersnatch.
Yeah, Bandersnatch.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't like real scary or anything, but it was actually really fun.
It was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was real
It's
fun.
a Black Mirror. It's from the Black Mirror.
Yeah.
The Black
Oh.
Mirror movie.
I never got into Black Mirror.
I love Black Mirror. I think it's great. Actually, I think they just dropped a new season, didn't they? Check it out. But the movie was a choose your own adventure. So if you had to have the right interface or it wouldn't play. So, but if you play the interface, basically every once in a while you come to a decision you have to make. So there's multiple solutions, multiple endings. And it was actually pretty well done.
What was that Netflix show that was on a couple of years ago about the town with the witch and all the one town's always on the down, the other town's always on the up, and I think they did 2 seasons of it on Netflix, and there's a 3rd season that's supposed to come. Or no, they did like episodes, but they were all 14 something. I can't remember what the fuck it was called, but it was all like the history of this town told in like 3 or 4 episodes, 4 movies type thing. Fuck. I can't remember. I'm going to look for it while you guys talk. Go ahead.
Are you talking about the one that was like in different decades?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it. Fear Street?
Fear Street. I think that's it.
Yeah.
That was good.
It was pretty good, yeah.
It was, that was it. Yeah, so part 1 was 1994, and then they, and then part 3 was like 1666, where they're all like fucking pilgrims and shit.
I enjoyed it.
Really good. They did the horror well because it was generational horror, right? It was like, it was fun to see that type of shit. Yeah, it was good. It was really good.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Favorite horror film of all time, Cody.
Already said it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Brian, I know you don't like horror, but what's the movie that scared you the most?
Scared me the most? I have no idea, but by default, I'll just say Alien because I have seen that one.
And it scared you?
A little bit.
Okay. If the Star Trek session scared you, Alien had to have scared you.
I didn't say it scared me. It just put me on that suspense.
Whatever, baby Lala. You were scared on the derelict ship. Oh, no. Oh, the power's out. Oh, no. All right, Len, favorite horror film or movie that scared you the most?
Well, the movie that I think disturbed me by far more than any other, I think would... I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that it was Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi. But in terms of...
Dale trumped you.
The movie that frightened me certainly more than any other, based on how old I was when it came out, was Alien, the first one.
Alien, okay. Sean?
Naturally, whenever this question gets asked, all of the answers I would have disappear from my brain. But I'm going to tell you one that I've found recently that I always think about and I like to rewatch is Train to Busan.
Which one?
Train to Busan.
I've never seen Train to Busan.
Really, really good.
Really good, yeah.
A horror film?
Yeah, it's a zombie film. It's more a drama film with zombies, but oh my god, is it so good? It's just high octane, great characterization, great story. So yeah, I'm not going to put it as my favorite, but it's up there. My favorite is Nebulous. It's always changing. You ask me again tomorrow, I'll give you a new answer.
All right, fair. I've often said Changeling is my favorite horror film. Like The Changeling 1980 is just an amazing film. But the movie that scared me the most, Evil Dead. The original Evil Dead. I was 11 when I saw that, maybe 10. Scared the living shit out of me that I refused to watch Evil Dead 2 until I was like 19, and my friends were like, "Dude, it's not scary," and they made me watch it. I'm like, "This isn't scary." So I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna watch Evil Dead then," because obviously I'm thinking of it the wrong way. So I watched it, I'm like, "Oh no, this was a horror film." Evil Dead was a horror film. Evil Dead 2 was comedy.
I will amend that if we're going back to my childhood, the one that I loved was American Werewolf in London. I always
loved that movie.
Oh, but I didn't find it scary, but I love that movie. And my little brother tells me that
I found it scary.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, maybe 8, but
yeah.
I never watched The Ring. I never watched The Grudge. I never watched any of those films. I kind of checked out of horror right around I Know What You Did Last Summer. because I was like, okay, this fucking shit is garbage. And as soon as I see these types of like, fuck it. When I watch a movie, a horror movie with young pretty people in it, there better be a psycho with an axe fucking them up. You know what I mean? Like otherwise, I don't give a fuck about young pretty people in a movie. So for me, you know, it's just there hasn't been a really scary movie for me in a long time. Like none of this shit scares me anymore because it's like now
we get older, we get more grounded, right?
Yeah, maybe I'm desensitized or something. There have been horror movies I've enjoyed though, like Trick or Treat. I enjoyed the shit out of Trick or Treat. That was a fun fucking movie, you know. But I want Creepshow. You know what I mean? I want like that original Creepshow. Not scary, but disturbing at times, you know, and fucking awesome to watch.
Creepshow 2 was good too.
Creepshow 2 is okay, but dude, come on. Where's my cake, Bedelia? Like that shit is fucking intense.
The first one's the best. Yeah, they were just good stories. They were all just good stories. Yeah.
You ever see Night of the Creeps?
I don't think so.
Same guy. Same guy did Monster Squad.
Okay.
Got Tom Atkins. I got good news and I got bad news, girls. The good news is your dates are here. The bad news is they're dead. It's so fucking good. It's not scary, but it's such a good fucking movie. You know what I mean? Like Brian might get scared by it because Brian's not a horror head. You're a horror head, Cody. I'm a horror head. Len obviously has an appreciation for horror, and I'm pretty sure Sean's a bit of a horror head based on the conversation. That type of shit won't scare us because we're like, I've seen this shit before, but we get into it for the tropes and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
That's why I love Pumpkinhead.
Oh, yeah.
I had never seen anything like Pumpkinhead before when I saw Pumpkinhead. And remember, this is at the height of the fucking Freddy Jason the period of filmmaking, right? They're the kings of horror at that moment in time. And you go into the video store and there's this thing, Pumpkinhead with Lance Henriksen. All right, let's watch that. And then by the end, you're like, God damn, that was a good movie.
Yeah, I loved it when I first saw it back in the 80s. Did you ever see it was a really low budget film, indie film called Scarecrows?
No.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, it's really cool.
That was actually pretty good. I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, how are we gonna rest on the beach if we're dead? Or whatever the guys.
Yeah. I saw a really good low budget horror film about a year ago. It's called Scary Movie. And it was just released like a year ago. Not the Scary Movie from the 90s.
Okay, I was going to say.
This was made.
I've heard of this one.
1989, 1990, and it was made by a film student who became like a big director, and I can't remember his name, but it was never released until like a year or two ago. And it's actually a really well made film. It's, he made it when he was in film school, and it's about this like paranoid like dorky kid, and he goes to a haunted house and shit goes awry, and it's really well made. Actually, it's really fun.
Okay, O'Neill brings up something interesting. He says, the first Children of the Corn. Now, here's my problem with that. I don't think there has ever been a scary Stephen King movie other than... I don't think there's ever been a scary Stephen King movie.
You didn't like Misery? Misery was good.
Love Misery, but it didn't scare me. It just creeped me out when he didn't get out of the cock-a-doodle car. I'm like, okay.
No, you're right. It's not really a scary movie, but it is.
Needful Things was bad. Like the book is so good. Like his books are scary, but his movies are never scary. Like really? Can you guys think of one that was actually scary?
Well, so it's hard for me to judge because I'm not scared by horror movies. Period.
Ever?
When I was a kid, I was, but now I've seen so many horror movies that ever since I was a teenager to now, like I haven't seen a movie that's like scare me.
I got to answer this. I got to get into this. Salem's Lot at 11 years old is terrifying. Absolutely. Salem's Lot at 18 years old is a goofy piece of shit where you go, why does that vampire look so stupid?
Yeah, exactly. Like, so, a lot of those Stephen King movies when I was a kid did scare me, but now they don't.
I love Maximum Overdrive, but it ain't scary. Yeah. You're right. Thank you for the super chat, sir. Like there's just nothing scary about Stephen King movies. Everyone talks about Christine being so good. I watched it. I was like, it's all right. I don't know why everybody raves about this fucking movie. It's not Carpenter's best film, that's for sure.
Cujo, maybe.
Cujo wasn't scary. Cujo was intense. It was tense, but it wasn't scary.
Yeah.
It wasn't scary. It was creepy, but it wasn't scary. You know, I much prefer fucking the 90s miniseries.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Fucking Tim Curry as Pennywise is just like fuck.
Perfect.
You know,
Perfect.
beautiful. You
I
know,
was trying to think. Doctor Sleep was good, but you're right. It wasn't
Well,
scary.
here's a good
right?
movie, and they did such a good job of mixing the two, right? Kubrick and King's The Shining, like
What's
well
funny
done.
about that is the book Shining is brilliant. The movie is garbage. The book Doctor Sleep is garbage, but the
the
movie,
movie is brilliant. Yeah, I agree on that. I like the Kubrick film, to be honest. I do like it, but I think Full Metal Jacket was far scarier. You know,
Oh,
what I mean? I was like, oh shit! Especially when you get to that weird realization when you've watched it for about the 4th or 5th time in your life in a film studies group, and you just go, "Oh shit!" The second act when they get to Vietnam are all the same characters from Boot Camp Reborn as the killers they're meant to be now. That's fucking disturbing. You know what I mean? Like, fucking what's his name? Mother Lover is fucking Private Pile, but Private Pile actualized as a killer for the army now and stuff like that. You just go, this is fucking weird, you know? But not scary. Like the horror films have to do something to your mind to be scary. If you're scared by gross shit or jump scares, well, then you are the mark. You know what I mean? You are the person that's going to go to the carnival and believe the dog-headed boy is the dog-headed boy, and that's exactly who they're targeting as the audience.
anybody can be startled by a jump scare.
Sure.
That fades after seconds.
So Paranormal Activity. I told my girlfriend at the time about it. I said, it's really scary. You should watch it. She goes, okay, I'll watch it. She watched it with her sister. She's like, that's not scary. It was just dumb. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I thought it was scary, but you didn't think it was scary. Cool. 3 a.m, my phone rings. I can't sleep. What do you mean you can't sleep? I'm just thinking about that fucking movie. I can't sleep. Stay up and talk to me. I just stayed with her till the sun came up before she could go to bed. That's a successful film. You know what I mean? It got inside her head. It fucked with her head. Horror films should be scary while you're watching them, but they should be extra scary later when you're thinking about them. So that's what if you're going to do it in role playing. How do you get in the player's head? For me, the rules we've established are never explain anything, simple system with no mechanics that drag them out of the game, small number of players, and you as the referee never break character. What else? Any other ideas?
Environment matters.
I
Well,
guess
Len-
I just got $5 for being awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that, all ones. All right. So yeah, what else can we do? What else can we do to get inside our players' heads and scare them?
I would say be more visceral in a horror game. You know, really describe things in a more visceral nature and give more atmosphere when you're describing things. Not like when you're in D&D and you're like, oh, you go to the end, you know, you see some, you know, mercenaries in the corner and like there's some people giving drinks and stuff. And you give like brief descriptions. In a horror game, you want to get real visceral, right? You know, you go into the cave. It's moist and wet. You can hear the dripping of the water. You know, you want to set the tone and the mood for that kind of game. And I think
It's one of the few games where the DM should be doing the most talking.
Absolutely.
Unlike other games where they're doing the least amount of talking, in a horror game they should be doing the most talking because they're setting the stage always. I agree with that.
A lot more narrative and a lot more description.
I don't necessarily agree. I think the players, if they're invested and they're engaging with each other, and what you're doing is you're just drip feeding the information that they need, and they're doing the rest. You can, I think the effect will be the same because then they're doing it to themselves.
Sure,
They're guessing what could it be, and then they're puzzling it out. As you say, it's in their head now. They're the ones doing all the work.
How about a healthy mix of the two, setting the stage and then letting them feel it and start thinking about it, right?
But if you're constantly interrupting to give them descriptions and to try to set the stage or more, again, then you're going to be overdoing it.
No, there is definitely a balance you need to achieve. But like when they're first encountering a room or first encountering the mansion or first walking into the strange cafe, I hate to break the news to you, Shauner, you got to tell, because unless you got a fucking 3D projector that can bring images out of your mind for them, they're going to have to hear a verbal description, right? So give them that description, but make it visceral, make it tangible, make it real. That works. But then shut up and let them explore it. Let them engage with it. What are you laughing at?
You know what I'm laughing at.
What are we laughing at? I'm sorry, I'm not getting what we're laughing at.
Take a look at Take
It's
a
great.
look at the
Haydar?
last chat.
No,
Yes, of
fucking
course.
So I was still back on the previous one. Unnerve the player by using a dice system that puts them off their base 10 comfort zone. Hey, Len, can you explain why 2D12 doesn't work? Since you once explained it to me and I can't remember how to say it to them, but maybe they'll shut up once they hear it from someone who can explain the mechanics.
No, we
to them.
won't.
I will think about it. Yes.
Well, next week, if you're coming back, you're doing it because Brian's going to be reviewing Lower Decks from Modiphius next week.
Oh, I need to finish that.
Oh, nice.
So that'll be something we can look forward to. Yeah, long pauses. Long pauses give the players time to stew and think. And Shauner, you have to set the stage. How the fuck are you going to get It's a haunted house. Okay. I mean, come on, man. It's not D&D. It's horror.
You know what? I'm sorry. Somebody asked a question about how to get in players' heads without,
Pushing
and
the line.
push
That was
their
the
buttons
earlier
with-
super chat I was looking at, which is what is not too far and what's not far enough. Yeah, well, you got to know your group.
100%. And I will say, if you're even toying with the idea of doing a horror game and one where you're going to look to try to push people's buttons, this is one where you sit around the table as adults and maybe one-on-one have one-on-one conversations where you really do talk to people about what's okay and what's not. Because unless you've literally grown up with the people since they're 6, horror games do tend to push some buttons, and you don't know what people have been through. You don't know what they have lived through. You don't know what their experiences are. And you want to be very, very, no role-playing game is worth tickling an experiential nerve that needs to be left alone. So absolutely positively have conversations with all of your players about what to avoid, what's whatever. And I would say, even in Games of Good Friends, might be a place where the X card or some other kind of defense mechanic, some other safety mechanic is important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shauner, I look forward to your video where you show us how to do this because I these are just words to me at this point in time, I'm sorry to say. And Justin, that's absolutely not valid in a horror game. In any other game, I agree with you, but a horror game, you need to set the stage, you need to set the mood, you need to let them know what they're interacting with, right? And that's the thing. Horror breaks the rules. All the stuff you've learned about being a good GM in D&D or Call of Cthulhu, because that's not horror, or Star Trek or whatever else you're playing, I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. But when it comes to horror, it's a different monkey completely. It's a whole other circus. And you really got to make sure the players understand what they're looking at. Because setting the stage, using those descriptions, you're also giving them the clues that something's not right. You're not telling them what's wrong, but you're giving them that little edge.
I know what
Sorry.
Sean is saying. He's saying you describe the situation rather than tell them. It's like you say, you don't say you're in a haunted house. You describe the house. You describe, the creak of the floorboard or the dark corridors, the cobwebs. You don't have to.
The broken shutters.
Yeah. Just,
Right. In short, you don't say you're afraid.
Yeah.
You don't say you're afraid. You just describe
absolutely.
the elements.
That's what he's getting at, I guess.
Right.
Don't tell them the clues. Let them find them. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's one thing to say, you drive into the town and you see the house on the hill and that's where you're going. Here's your 3 sentences. You enter the town. It's a New England town. It's one of those quiet towns. It's autumn. The leaves are changing. There's that smell in the air of fireplaces burning, keeping the houses warm. You can smell that smell. And as you see above this town of very, very Elizabethan and Edwardian architecture, there's this hill. And you can see the trees, which are bare and naked, making them almost look like skeletons of trees. And at the top of that hill, up a winding road, you see it. 4 stories, Victorian. The top windows almost give you the idea of eyes looking at you. And that's where you need to go. It's a different beast. It's a very different beast at that point in time. You can't just be economy boy when you're trying to run that kind of a story. It's not the same effect.
See, Sean says here, don't tell players how they think, feel, hear, smell. Think and feel 100%, but hear and smell are external
Absolutely.
stimulus. You've got to tell them what they hear and smell because that's what they're going to act on.
Absolutely.
External stimulus, you as the DM, either if it's important, you volunteered, or if the players ask for it or smell around, that's different. But yeah, I'm not going to tell them what to think or what they say or how they feel. No, absolutely. They figure that out themselves.
Yeah, and if your players aren't willing to engage, don't play horror.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's
Horror
that
game.
simple.
Yeah,
They don't
and,
want to
well,
play.
but
Sorry,
a
go
lot
ahead,
of that
Brian.
I think does come down to, you know, how are you describing everything? You know, if it's like, you know, if they've already made the decision to go to the haunted house, even though you didn't tell them it was a haunted house, well, once they get there and you start describing it, okay, it's I don't think too many players are going to be like, nope, I'm out, and just turn around and walk away. You know, kind of like back to our Star Trek session where, like I said, I was, you know, maybe no one else was feeling, you know, any tension, but I was already invested. I was already there. If you already set it up, if you get your players engaged, you can keep them there. But I think, like we were also saying, I don't think it's something necessarily that you want to run all the time,
No.
but use more as flavor for your campaign instead of
Agreed.
as
Very
the
much
whole
agreed.
campaign.
FMD, can you please explain this? I don't understand this. My Fantasia. I don't know what that means. If you could explain that, would be great. Justin said something. Here we go. Game Master describes the surrounding, not the character interactions with it. It's an RPG. I don't think anyone here is advocating for telling the players what they do at all. I think we're advocating for setting the stage descriptively, and as Cody used that great word, viscerally, and then allowing them to choose their emotion, choose their reaction, and choose their action.
Yeah, and
And
one thing actually, one thing actually that I wanted to bring up earlier, but squirrel, the whole point, and I literally just forgot it. Damn it.
Here, Beans has words for you, Brian.
Oh no. Someone was saying about how needing to scare the players instead of the characters, but I don't think you can do that, because I don't think, like, at this point you're trying to get emotions. Characters unfortunately don't exist, you know, and so if you're trying to evoke an emotional reaction, if you're trying to get that thing going, unfortunately you have to go for the players, because, you know, if the character doesn't feel, the player does. Does that make sense? Cody
I kind of agree with you. In a horror game, you should be getting in the player's head, but a good player that can role play a character well can portray that horror through his character well. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, like,
Sure.
if it may not scare me as a player, but I can try to portray that in my role playing as that character, you know what I'm saying, to the best of my ability. And I think that's important too, because that might trigger something else in another player, and it might not be his character, it might be the player, you know, because it seems like I'm actually freaking out, but I'm just freaking out in character, et cetera, et cetera. But I think there's a two-sided coin to that. You know, you can definitely portray that in character. You can role play that well, and I think that's important because it adds more to what you're trying to achieve in a horror game.
Yeah. But good role playing, you're always, ultimately, if you're really into the game and you're really playing your character, you're going. It doesn't matter if it's horror, superheroes, cyberpunk. You're going to get into the character, and you're going to start having some reactions. You lose yourself in the character a little bit, and that's when you're going to have your most fun. I think personally, that's me just because I'm an actor, but that's when I'm going to have the most fun. When my character does something in the moment that I didn't plan to do, I just reacted as the character. That's fun. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's difficult to just everybody just keep kicking Cody's ass.
Real quick, Dale. Cody and the person behind him have a question.
Okay.
Exactly, Dale. Exactly. So,
you know, go ahead.
Just very quickly, I think a blend of what Brian was going for and what Cody said. Cody, I would want, if you were playing in my game, you to act appropriately to your character, absolutely. But if there's something I could do to, I don't know if disturb is the right word, because I don't want to disturb you. But if I could do something, if I could do something to disquiet you for a moment, then that's sufficient. That's
absolutely.
If I could do something to open the door for you to disquiet yourself, if I could, and again, and that would be to you, not even your character. It's something that might be scary in the theater, but it's a different context here. You may be talking to someone, and someone else may see that the person you're talking to actually has their entire back opened up, and there is a hand reaching in and tickling their spine and moving them. and making them speak, even though your character doesn't know this at all. That may be the image of a person unpeeled, like an open banana in the back, with the arms of something reaching into them and almost moving them like a puppet, may disquiet you for a moment. And that or whatever, the details along those lines. And so, and then when your character sees that, you can act scared, but it's sort of a blend of the two, I think, is what you're going for in horror to create.
Yeah, no, and that's what I was saying. I don't disagree with that. I think you should be getting into the players' heads, but at the same time, there's some players like me that aren't going to be disquieted by a lot of things. You know what I mean? I don't want to go into details, but I've seen some real shit in real life, and I've also just watched a lot of movies and stuff, but I have seen real horrific things. And so I'm a little bit less horrified by things. Now, don't get me wrong.
Burning a first edition Robotech Palladium book.
That kind of disturbs me, actually.
I got to say something really quickly because this is a joke. Yeah, fuck you. I could have been your DM, but you quit the game. Yeah. And then Len quit the game, and then the game died. Remember that awesome game we were playing?
I was having so much fun.
Me too.
Everybody's like, "Oh, I got stuff to do. I'm busy."
I haven't role played in 7 weeks. Please stop.
Little girls. That's what they were. I think we all agree. Players make their decisions. We tell the story. That's fine. I think we all agree. It's finding that fine balance between player and character and seeing where they can go with the horror. But I think it also comes down to knowing what kind of horror people like, right? Some people like gore. Some people like suspense. Some people like jump scares. Some people like psychological thrillers. Some people like lots of different stuff. So ultimately, know your group. Don't be running a horror game for a bunch of strangers online. And the ghosts in Brian's kitchen apparently are active again.
I always wonder what's actually going to get picked up and what isn't.
Everything. Just assume everything on your mic. I'm going to get everybody to get together and we're going to buy you a fucking unidirectional mic for Christmas.
And then Brian turns to look to see what Kim's doing, and she's not there.
Wait!
Kim comes in from the other side.
What are you looking at?
She can't come in from the other side because there's a wall.
Then that makes it even scarier.
You hear her knocking on the window. Then you turn and realize she's knocking from inside the mirror.
I'm in the walls, Brian.
When I was in college, we were hanging out one night in the house. We had all the lights off counts. We were talking about ghosts and horror and all this type of stuff. And one of the friends was a complete skeptic of anything supernatural. He's like, I want to believe in this stuff, but I've never seen anything happen. And there was a mirror right where all our weights were in the second room off the living room. And it was a big wall mirror that we may have appropriated from a university. We're not going to talk about that. And my buddy just goes, really? Go touch the mirror. And he couldn't. He was just like, no, I'm good. I'll just sit here. I'm good. He was not going to get up and go touch the mirror. It was really funny. What mic do I use? I use a Monano or something like that. I got it. Friends bought it for me a couple of years ago, 5 years ago. Go ahead, Len.
Well, he was
talking about horror role-playing games. And everyone's welcome to not answer this question if they don't want to. And I don't want any details. Just asking yes or no. So has anyone here had an experience that they cannot quantify and clarify and define?
Yes.
Yes.
Nope.
Well, not that I consider scary.
It may not be scary. It may be. That's up to you.
Paranormal.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I know
there's a reason
I can't quantify, but no.
There's a reason I believe in UFOs and I don't believe in ghosts. So I'll leave it at that.
I had both.
Oh. Look at all the yeses coming up in the fucking chat. Hungar's like, no. Because Hungar, if ghosts showed up at your house, you'd crack open a cold one and figure out how to play fucking D&D with them. Hey, my brothers, come on, sit down. Let's play some
Are you
D&D.
thinking of me? I'll bring in the ghost to play D&D.
Look at this chat. This is
long after I'm dead.
That sounds like a good time, cracking off cold ones with Hungard the Starbarian and with ghosts and stuff. That sounds awesome.
That would be hilarious.
So,
Well, if you come to Claricon next year, you can crack off one with Hungar the Starvarian and the Holy Ghost.
And after we're going to be at ClareCon, and we're going to work on getting Cody there, and we're going to work on getting Brian there, and we're going to work on getting Len there.
And if Brian comes, Kim's probably coming with.
Even better. We'll listen, just to save her customs, we'll go down to Walmart and buy some pots and pans for her. And then as we're doing shit at the convention, she could just bang them off to the side to her heart's content.
There is a kitchen. Right adjacent to the main room.
There we go. Well, gentlemen, we are coming up on the 2-hour mark. Any closing thoughts on this topic?
Try running a horror game if you get your players investment, just a one shot if you haven't. It's a different experience and it can be a lot of fun. Don't try to scare your players. Just try to tickle their imaginations and create opportunities for them to scare themselves if they want to allow that to happen.
When I was in Canada, I went to Canada, and then I was in Canada. Canada.
it's one time in Canada.
As a reply to that, I would like
Feel
to
like,
point out though that I
Brian
haven't
is-
mentioned England this entire stream
You just did.
until just now.
You know who Brian reminds me of is that was it Stuart, the kid from Kids in the Hall? Like the little
my
kid.
head was made out
Yeah.
of veal. How much would it be worth?
That's what Brian.
I often eat strange things for money.
I do not eat strange
Bible?
things for money, but
I will eat strange things for money. Let's be clear. I have 2 kids. College is expensive, so let's DM me or PM me or whatever.
Yeah, so cell phone, if you go look up Manoa on Amazon, you'll find it. I think it's a good mic. It works well for me. I mean, you do you, obviously. It's unidirectional, so I kind of, if I get off of it, it doesn't pick it up as well, but if I'm right on it, it's pretty good. Who's that behind me? Oh, it's Beans. Oh no, the cat is up at the top of the shelf looking for witches outside. All right, any closing thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, I want to run a horror game soon because I haven't run a horror game in a long time. And I haven't really even thought about running a horror game until we had this talk. And I was like, man, I want to do that again. It's been a long time since I've done that. And again, I don't think it works well as like a campaign, but like it can be really effective as a one shot. And also I want to say that, like, as we were talking, I kind of agree with Bear's statement. I think a horror game would work better with people you know, because I think you get inside their heads better. And it could be way more effective. And all the advice here that everybody was talking about, I think was really, really good tonight.
And don't invite Brian because you'll have to explain why the ghosts are banging pots and pans and starting microwaves. It'll ruin the game. I'm sorry. It will. Fair enough. Brian, any closing thoughts?
My closing thought would just be, don't think that you have to go big. It doesn't have to be the big, scary, oh my gosh, everything has gone horribly sideways. Again, bringing up our Star Trek game, it was just little things that added up some tension that, it may not even hit the entire party, but it may just hit one person and give them a different experience. So that would be my advice, is don't always think you have to go big. Keep it small.
Sean, any parting words?
Well, not having successfully run a horror game, I have no advice to impart other than what they're saying. Yes, get your players invested. Like any game, get your players invested. And they'll be scared at the drop of a dime, even if it's not horrifying. So long as there's the stakes, so long as there's a chance of failure, I think that'll do it in any genre. But it adds to the horror if they're going to feel it. So yeah. Get your players invested. There's my sage wisdom for the evening, because nobody would have thought of that one.
But it's valuable to remind everybody of it. For me, I'd say do your homework, watch horror, figure out what scares you, Because if you can't scare yourself, you can't scare your players. It's as simple as that. So figure out what scares you. Find the movies that hit those notes so you know what notes you want to replicate. Because if you're hitting something that you felt primally, it will come across as a primal fear and could resonate inside their heads a little bit more as well. All right, Cody, pimp your shit.
I'm GM Cody, and I've got a small little channel where I talk about all the games I love, and I just wax nostalgia and tell stories. I do reviews of games. I do whatever the hell I want, really. So if you want more of this, come over to my channel.
And it's a crying shame you don't have 1,000 subscribers yet. I don't know what the fuck's wrong with people, man.
Oh.
I don't know. Okay, and Brian, any parting words from you, sir?
Parting words for me, go subscribe to GM Cody. I watched his little Palladium video, or not little, it's Cody, it's never little. But I watched his Palladium video yesterday, and I just love the way the guy that tells a story. So please go subscribe to him. He's woefully undersubscribed to. But as for me,
Criminally undersubscribed.
Yes, exactly. As for me, gaming with ADHD, I cover all sorts of gaming topics, whether it's board games, miniatures, role-playing, or anything in between. I'd love for you to come along and see what we are talking about. Tomorrow, and I know he's hanging around in chat, I'm going to have Patrick Goodman on. We're going to do a topics and tangents. We're going to get to know him and his experience in development through the RPG space. So look forward to that. And then apparently next week, here on the Four Color Cafe, I'm doing a review of Star Trek Adventures Lower Decks. So come back for that too. So
yeah, baby. Yeah. Len, pimp anything?
Sure. You want to buy some role-playing games, you can buy Black Star. If you like Star Wars, you could buy This Axe I Hack. If you would like a very rules light Conan, or you could buy There and Hack Again if you want a very rules light Tolkien-esque fantasy game. And that's all for now, and there's some other stuff in the works.
And you can also buy Prowlers and Paragons if you want a fun, highly well-reviewed superhero game.
There's that too. Thank you.
Sean!
Hello, I'm Sean. I am also otherwise known as Archmage Merlinster Candledor. Hello!
I love that guy.
I don't do horror on my show, but I do D&D, and I do what might be considered horror to the Railroad DM. I do Sandbox. So, I recap games, talk a little bit of theory. I've got 3 videos, hopefully I plan to have up by the end of the year, catching up all my recaps to the 2 next ones being recaps of the Claricon games. So, if that's of interest to you, I'm a big D&D nut. I know not everybody loves D&D, but that's my thing, and my thing is with puppets too. So we've got a wizard, a demi-lich, and an imp who are the stars of the show.
There you go. And I'm, of course, Bear the Gen X GM. I like to do these Wednesday night panels. Sometimes I do live streams, sometimes I don't. And Friday night, we'll be starting with the first session of the new Star Trek Paradise Station campaign. And then next Tuesday, we'll be back with at least 3 of these guys for part 2 of Star Trek Sojourner Episode 2, The Kamsrit Riddle. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I'm not running any other games maybe until the new year.
Quick question about Paradise Station.
Mm-hmm.
Is it part of the Sojourner universe?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
it's all set in one universe, set in 2380. Won't that be fun if we get a crossover at some point? Ooh. But beyond that, I want to thank everyone who was here tonight. I want to thank everyone in the chat. I want to thank everybody for super chats. You're getting me closer and closer to that Palladium Christmas box, which would be kind of fun to have. And otherwise, until next time, I will say, keep watching the skies.